So we are going live here in just a second.
Do we have anybody with us?
We have a few, but what's going to happen is I'm going to take these videos and I'm going to break down segments and use them for LinkedIn and use them for other little bits and pieces, and you'll be tagged everywhere.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, Jade.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Apparently better than you. You sound a little, we're just talking, you're a little bit tired.
I'm a bit tired, but at the same time, I didn't finish last night's session till 1 a.m. So.
Was that all? Of course, it's all on BBO, but people don't know what we're talking about. So we're actually going to come back to this in just a second. But first, let's talk about bridge, which is just like what? Spades? It's just like what? Playing hearts? Pinochle?
Yeah. Let's say that you probably have seen cartoons of 4 people sitting at a table. If you're a Marx Brothers fan, there's a Marx Brothers movie bridge scene in every Marx Brothers movie. They all played. You will see references to it in James Bond books and in James Bond. Ian Fleming was a great bridge player. Dr. No, the opening scene is James Bond succoring an opponent in a bridge hand. Think about the aspects of the game that you don't even think about, like a grand slam comes from whist. That was where the term came from. Finesse, so-and-so's long suit. I mean, there's so many aspects of the game in our daily language that we don't even recognize where they come from.
So what is this game? Like, talk to me like I've never seen the game. I've never played the game before.
There are 4 people who are sitting down at a table as pairs, working together towards a common goal, dealing with 13 cards in each hand, being given a problem in which they will communicate in the 35 words, a language of 35 words, actually 38, but all of which, or the vast majority of which only get to be used once. And you have to describe more variations than feet to the nearest star.
So there's the language part, right? Like this.
That's the entire game is a language part.
Bidding is language for sure. Like when Travis and I play, we say that I'm good at the language part and he's better at the playing.
For the non-bridge players, it's a bridge game, and a bridge game is a card game. It's played with a flow deck of 52 cards. There's a trump suit sometimes. There's a negotiation for the contract of which you are trying to obtain a certain number of tricks. It's a trick kicking game. But what it is, as Eisenhower described, the absolute ultimate war game. In fact, if you were not a bridge player, you were serving on Eisenhower's staff, period. The reason partly for that is because bridge is a game of closed information. At the Mind Sport Olympics, there's 7 typical games. Go, chess, checkers, Chinese checkers, or occasionally hearts, Scrabble. In fact, one of the kids that I recruited for the national junior team is called Dr. Big, and he is a 5 or 6 time, maybe 7-time world champion of Scrabble. He's an incredible player. David Wiegand. He was a kid who I started him on bridge, or he had, sort of basic starting the game, and within a year and a half represented his country, won a silver medal in Florida, losing to an incredible Italian team, one of the best teams I've ever seen. But he's built his own mortgage company. He's just a guy who really is cool. And by the way, just because he didn't have anything to do on the weekends, he was the member of a touring ska band as a trombone player. Went to Reed, but his family's from Nebraska or Kansas, one of those, and lives in Portland, Oregon, or in that area. He's a terrific mind. I mean, and he's sort of an example of kind of what happens. I mean, Drew Hoskins ended up being in charge of Facebook games programming, another one of my juniors. Ari Greenberg was a kid who was said he wanted to drop out of school for a year so that he could go and become a great player. And I said, no, you're going to mature later. So he went to Japan, learned Japanese in about 10 minutes, was working in Google Japan when they went public, was working with Facebook when they went public. I mean, he did okay. Yeah. So, and he's 35. I mean, it's like and those are just two of them. I mean, and those are the kids that start out. And
well,
all these
almost like really intimidating. Like, do I have to be really smart to play bridge?
Bridge is a game of wisdom, right? Doesn't hurt to be smart. Sometimes it hurts to be smart. Sometimes, you get a bit arrogant and you think, I can handle whatever is going to happen. I mean, think about this as like, you've been in business for a while. You have this business that you have seen it all until you haven't. Right. And you're in this preparation, like I can handle anything. So yes, let's take this loan, and force majeure strikes. Force majeure might be a sudden change in relationships. Force majeure might be that your kid is not doing as well as he might be in school, right? That your life has changed a bit and it's affected your ability to oversee some website that you had acquired as an investment that became the stepchild that you haven't paid attention to.
About me?
But I'm see, that's the kind of thing though, right? I mean, it looked like a great idea at the time. And the funny thing is it probably was. And sometimes we forget that our great ideas still need the same nurturing, right? It's a great idea. Let's get this. And then we don't do anything with it for a while. And the problem is that as that time ages, right, this is not like a fine wine, right? It doesn't get better without some nurturing, without, being kept in the correct environment, without being correct. Yeah. Bridge players are the same. I take people who have raw knowledge of life. With adults are different than kids. Kids, you have to build the vessel to contain wisdom. Adults already have the vessel. It's just usually filled with a bunch of crap. There's in an Eastern philosophy, it's like if you take a glass of wine and a glass of water, they're both full. And the wine is the knowledge that you need, and you pour it into the other glass that's already full. All it's going to do is overflow. So you have to dump the glass of water in order to contain the wine. So the problem is that we don't always identify as players, as humans, what's crap and what isn't. Right? And a lot of our crap is that I did something once and it didn't work. So I'm never going to do that again. And we're going to dismiss any experience that we've had associated with that because it wasn't such a good thing. Except that maybe we were ahead of our thought process. We were ahead of our time, right? It's like the kid who's trying to high jump, 5 feet when he's only 4'2". He can do it when he's later, when he's bigger, when he's older, because he has the form down. But all he's doing is running into the bar now, head first usually. So that was me. So I knew I was going to be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
But the point is that we take those life experiences, and now we're at a point in our lives where we've decided to take on something. If you're an entrepreneur, you already have the guts to do something. There's a lot of risk involved. And we think it's a good idea. And then we spend the first 4 or 5 years, while we still have the energy, thinking this is a great idea, until we start having this self-doubt that creeps in, that prevents us from fulfilling our experience, our belief set. Right? Sometimes you have to know when it's a bad business and you just have to get out. You get out as fast as you can, because getting out faster and earlier is a lot cheaper, right? It doesn't take down the family with him. It doesn't take your personality down with him, right? And the problem is that we get so wrapped up in the idea that this is a failure that we forget that failure is part of what makes us successful. You know, that we decide to dismiss the entire business. We don't think about the lessons we've learned from it. And when those lessons start to creep up in different aspects of our life and different things that we've pursued, we just there and say, no, we have slammed the lid on the box. We don't want to re-experience any of that.
Yeah. So this happens to me like in business, yes, but in bridge, when
Yeah.
somebody wants to go back and talk about a hand, I'm like, next hand, we're moving on. I don't want to know. Let's just go. Next hand. It was a disaster. The split was bad. Leave me alone.
There's a difference between blame assessment and investment, right? I mean, it's one thing to analyze why something failed. It's another thing to analyze how we prevent it from happening again. So my discussions about in the game and my discussions with players from all over the world are about how to avoid this happening again. How do we prevent the re-experiencing of this failure? What will give us a better chance of success the next time? Because you have to remember that in our game, I mean, I'm one of the few players who's played over 1 million hands. I mean, literally, there's maybe 5 of us in the world, right? And maybe not even that many. And I haven't seen 1/1000th of 1% of all of the hands that are possible. Right? I mean, that means that there's something that's always new. And there's something that's always going to happen that we can't account for, right? That we're trying to do something that has an expectation of success somewhere around 37.5%, which means 62.5% of the time you strike out, right? I mean, that's what happens. You think about being in an environment where the best players in the world lose 95% of the time. So we were talking about the Mind Sport Olympics earlier. When they were talking about what the hardest game in the world is, bridge was voted #1 by all the players of all the different mind sports because bridge is closed and all the other sports are open. Think about computer programs, right? You can see the whole board in a chess game. You can see the whole board in a Go game, but you can't see all the cards in a bridge game. You know, that's why there's no bridge program that's really successful at playing against humans. It's also why we're more successful than algorithms in options trading. It's why we're more successful in creating leaps, intuitive leaps into inventing things like steroids, like George Rosencrantz did.
When you say we, you're talking about bridge players.
I am talking about the entire realm of players, right? I mean, there's like people who've invented the universal remote control that just happen to be housewives, right? I mean, they're a bridge player. They saw a problem, they wanted to solve it. They got tired of having all of these remotes. She did happen to go to RPI, but when her husband came home from the war, she didn't work. So he built her the kitchen of her dreams, and there was like 9 remotes, and she kept pulling the wrong remote out of the box. She got tired of it. She sat down, she drew a schematic, she sold the Kyocera, I think it was. And she made more money in like 6 months than her husband had for 30 years at General Electric as a top executive. Right? So I said, so what did you do? Oh, I was a housewife. Yeah, a housewife who invented the universal remote control, says I mean, that's the legend. Says her sister, who was a school teacher. All I did was teach school. Okay, great. Yeah. So she says, yeah, then she has a picture at the wall of her kids who graduated college, like 10,000 of them or something. And of them, of this little school in upstate New York, the graduating class, maybe 17 or something. One year, 11 of them went to Ivy League schools. Right. It was just a public school. Right. It's like if you drove into Elk Point, South Dakota, and you walked into town and say, "Hey, look, I'm looking for a bridge game." And they said, "Yeah, there's a few people who live, on the corner of Pearl and Pleasant who play pretty well." And you go and you play us, and you suddenly discover that you are playing against probably the best woman in the history of the world. My wife, Karen, is an unbelievable player. And you're playing with me, and you're playing with Dr. Donna Lombardini. And Dr. Donna Lombardini is somebody that, is a little short Italian, passionate, vibrant. You've heard her. She's a bit vocal sometimes.
She scares me. I love her.
Yeah. The reason that we should celebrate her is that her work on data quality was so critical to the world. Okay. I mean, that's what her doctorate is, right? Computer science, data quality. Think about that. Smart bomb technology does not exist without this. Without her work, you want to reduce the deaths of millions of people in conflict. Literally, that's what that work did. I mean, everything from making sure planes were on time, Y2K didn't exist, all this stuff, right? And you're sitting there just playing with us, right? And you don't have any idea because of who we are peers in a game, right? I mean, you played against me. You've seen me do really stupid shit.
Dance a little bit when you do something stupid. Like,
yeah. Well, but it's true. I mean, you would talk about people that come and play. I mean, Warren Buffett builds a team, right? And his team is what he's used to make these decisions to purchase or buy stuff at, or sell it at Berkshire Hathaway, though he doesn't sell much. He wants those people to be bridge players because he makes 55,000 critical decisions a second as a bridge player and about 20 during the year. And one has to be better trained for this decision making. And he convinces a guy, a friend of his, to come and play bridge too more often because it'll make him, both a better, player, but it makes him a better human. And you can see that in the 20 years of the evolution of his game as a player, how much more socially conscious Bill Gates became. Because bridge is a game in which there isn't, there are correct answers, but not perfect answers. Right?
And that's the same in business. That's the same thing.
Kind of.
There's a lot of wrong answers out there. There's a lot of things out there. Right. And sometimes you have to be more creative than what other people are telling you is the right answer.
Well, the right answer is also subjective to you. I mean, for example, I owned part of a bar once. And now I don't have any issues with people who own them. I just know that when I kept seeing the same guy show up day after day, I realized I was making money off the misery of other people. And I needed to not do that. It wasn't the right answer for me. It was the right answer for the guy who bought it. He likes the lifestyle. He thinks of himself as a guy who's running a family pub. And I'm sure he does well by it. But the problem was I was losing sleep over it. I just didn't. The guys who couldn't control their intake or it would bother me. So I mean, that was something I needed to stop doing. And so there are things in which you decide that, fit your life or not. And really for entrepreneurs, right? Sometimes the business of being an entrepreneur is who they are. But sometimes they realize that the business that they're being an entrepreneur in really defines who they are. And so guys who are true entrepreneurs, people who like to build business and then sell it and move to a different business, right? What they're doing isn't that they tire of the other business. It's that all the tricks of their trade that they have trained themselves to do are done. It's time for somebody who really knows how to run a business to run it. That's why you have these guys who come in and start good businesses. and suddenly, the business turns south. And the whole concept of Peter principle and the likes, it isn't that they've reached their level of competency, it's that they've reached their level of ignorance. And their pride doesn't allow them to recognize ignorance. What was I good at? I'm good at building businesses. What am I good at? I'm good at building partnerships. I'm good at building teams. I never really cared about the money so much. I care that we get paid. I care that my mortgage is paid. I care about the fact that my dogs are fed. The family is taken care of. But my vocation is to be, somebody who teaches. A pedagogue, a true. I teach trainers. I coach trainers. Part of the deals that I have with countries now that I work with, like I work with China, I work with Ireland, is that I'm willing to train their teams. But part of that training process is that they have to submit people to be trained to be trainers, trained to be coaches, because I need that to be ongoing. To not just be, I got this team and I got them there, and I have the gold medals to prove it, right? I want them to be able to sustain that.
I imagine that's not a short process.
5 to 10 years. Most projects are 10 to 20 years. The one in Ireland now is the result of 20 years of building, and it started with a word. I said to Thomas McCormick, a good friend of mine now, and also part of our business relationship with him is he works with us in the US, we work with him in Ireland. 20 years ago, I said to him, if you really applied yourself, you could be a great player. 5 years ago, he was ready to do it. It took him 15 years. He was from 25 to 40 to really recognize that he needed to do this. True entrepreneurs do it because they need to, not because they want to. They really have to. Right? Why don't you work for somebody else? It was because you didn't want to deal with all the crap, right? So you're working for yourself, so you're used to dealing with a lot of crap, but it's your crap. It's not somebody else's crap, right?
Right.
And then you hire yourself out to people who have a bunch of crap that you have to deal with, right? But at least it's not your crap all the time, right? Except it is. It's just different. Those of us who really want to be great at something, and you ask really what bridge is, it's a card game. But it's a card game that is so engaging that the greatest minds come and play it and have no idea that they're not good. They don't understand why. They're smart. They should be able to figure this stuff out. Yeah, it's a Socratic thing, right? You can ask me a question about the game. I'll tell you whatever the answer is, and I'll be right. Okay. I'll tell you what the best odds are, what the best chances are, what the success or failure rates would be. That's not an answer. And I remember warning you that one of the things when we first talked was that I was really good at asking questions. Because often the answer isn't an answer, the question is an answer. Because you don't need to know the answer. You need to know what the question is in order for you to be able to derive the answer on your own. And I'm sure that you can translate that into many things, right? It's different. I don't want to be a mechanic for the car, right? But I can't help but have learned some things over the years, right? If you push the key in and you turn the key and nothing happens and there's no electrics or anything, the battery's probably dead, right? Well, I know how to charge the battery. I can do that. And there's some things that I just don't have the experience, the knowledge, or the tools for. In that case, I hire a mechanic. Right? And he'll ask me, or I'll ask him specific questions, and then says, "Well, do you want to know what happened here?" No, you know, does it run? Yeah, that's the question I need answered. Right?
Is there a point where, I know you work with a lot of business owners, is there a point that they recognize something in themselves and they're like, what would help with this is bridge? Or why, and it sounds like you're busier now more than ever with training. What do they see or what are they experiencing? They're like, I got to reach out to Jade, or I want to start playing bridge. I think this will be, what happens? What's the thing? What's the trigger?
Harry met Sally. I want to have what she's having. I have this friend, Dr. Martin Seligman. If you haven't watched his positive thinking stuff, you should. He's got TED Talks. He's like one of the greatest psychologists in the world. I'm playing bridge with him. And he's going to a book signing. And Learned Optimism is #1 on the New York Times nonfiction list, right? This 20 years ago. And he's the author, and his picture's on it. And we have a bridge hand in which he does something uncharacteristically pessimistic for a player, but reasonably consistent for Marty. And I reached over and I picked up one of the books and I said, "Have you actually read this?" He didn't get it at first, and then he got it. Because what he was doing was one of the worst things that any person can do to themselves in any aspect of their lives. And that's that they have this instinctive thing that they've decided is some guess, but it's not. It's unconscious competence, where you decide that you're going to do something because you know that that's the right thing to do. And then you spend the next instant and maybe for the rest of your life thinking about all the reasons your instinct is wrong. You undermine every decision you might make. You undermine your own confidence, your own faith in how you feel, how you think, what your emotional relationship with yourself is, right? The idea about being a player or a competitor in anything, whether it's business or sport or life, is to know what you need to do and do it. And to not even have to understand why you need to do this. It isn't that you shouldn't observe your instinct here. It isn't that you shouldn't challenge it, but you should challenge it by thinking about why all of the reasons you want to do something is right, as opposed to why it's wrong.
How do you know when there's a difference here? There's incompetence as well, right? So there are people who are overly optimistic about a bad decision that they've made. And like, if I just keep repeating to myself that it was a good decision, I'm going to rat off all these decisions and reasons why it's a great decision versus there's the flip side of that you were just describing, right? I mean, I have clients all the time that are talking themselves into bad decisions.
There's a difference, isn't there? One is seeking validation for the fact that this instinct is right. You're talking about having to convince yourself. I'm talking about validation. Now, I want to make a right here. Now, why is it I want to make a right here? Okay, that's one way to approach it, right? Oh, I don't want to make a right here. I don't want, left. That's counter to what your instinct does, right? Maybe you want to make a right here because on your left, just on the edge of peripheral vision, there's a car coming too fast, right? Maybe you have a human instinct that has a response for protection. Maybe it's that when you make the right, you suddenly drive by the pharmacy and you remember you're supposed to pick up a prescription now. Right? I mean, there's things that are going on in your head that you don't even recognize. I bet there are times when you walk out in the garden and you suddenly see something that you need to take care of, and you need to take care of it right now. Not, oh yeah, I should come back and take care of that tomorrow. I mean, right now. And now you might like try to come up with some reason that you don't want to do this odious task right this moment. Sound familiar?
Mhm.
Same thing, right? It's one of the things that happens in business, right? Is you see this that you must resolve instantly. And then there are things where you think that you have to resolve instantly that actually could be wait for 5 or 6 months or a year or never, right? And the problem is that we take these resources and immediately respond to what we perceive as a threat when that threat doesn't actually exist. But we perceive it's a threat. We don't feel comfortable about it, so we need to do something about to resolve it. What we really need to do is think about whether or not it actually needs being resolved. Is the energy required to resolve this more costly to the business or less costly to the business? Now, in partnerships, just like in life, and in relationships, you have two people working together towards a common goal, and often with different approaches. So I like to tell the Yogi Berra story about this. Yogi was a bridge player. He'd say when you come to a fork in the road, take it, right? But nobody knows the basis of that. He lived at the other end of a circle. So when you came up to the circle, you would go right, you would get to his house. If you go left, you get to his house. Right. Now, he and his wife had this big argument in New Jersey. I remember my family's from New Jersey, so we actually sort of know. And it got to the point where she would say it was faster to go right. He would say it was shorter to go left. He was right. It was shorter to go left by 80 feet. He paid the surveyors to do the work. But his wife was right that it was a second and a half faster to go to the right. Now, they had arguments about this that finally required a surveying team to settle this particular argument. But they both got to the same place, right? But they allowed the style difference to waste resource, right? They didn't like the fact that one wanted to go right and the other one went left. He said this was the basis for a lot of arguments. It wasn't. It was the outlet for a lot of arguments. So if you realize that you're working with somebody, sorry about the dogs, be quiet. Yeah, no chance, right? Skipper keys. Oh my God. Anyway, the problem we've got is that when we're working with somebody in a partnership or a team or in a business relationship and we don't like their exact style, we will let that impede our success. Right? If it doesn't counter to the goal, right? But today is a day you should wear red as opposed to blue. And you and I are looking at the red and the blue, and we're thinking, God, I didn't get the memo. I should have worn blue today, right? And we allow that to distract us from what our goal is. You and I have a common goal to help people feel better about situations in which there is conflict. Sometimes that conflict is artificially created in order to cover what the true conflict is. Like, this is a bad goal. And you're not helping me obtain this bad goal. Well, the fact is that maybe it's a good goal, but I don't believe it's a good goal. If I don't believe it's a good goal, I haven't bought into it. It's my responsibility, if we're in a partnership, to discuss how to resolve a bad goal. and sometimes we can't. Doesn't mean that the partnership has to break up, but it does mean that we need to follow Ben Franklin's advice. But you enter into a relationship, a bridge partnership, a business partnership, any type of relationship, marriage particularly, he was referring to, with your eyes wide open. The matter after you say, I do, the moment you do that, you keep your eyes half shut for the rest of your life. Because if you're too observant, you're going to find things to pick at. I don't like the way you put your pencils on the table. I don't like the fact that you're always 30 seconds late for the meeting. And now you can approach this from either a confrontation, or you can approach this as, it will make me more effective for you if you're timely. It reduces my anxiety. It reduces my concern. The first minute or two, I'm distracted about our timing. We need to remove that. And we can. It's a simple removal. But it is how we relate to each other. I promised you a bridge story, so I'll tell you one. J. Paul Stevens is playing bridge on my team in Washington, D.C. He's playing with Michael Capoletti, who is a great poker writer, also a Grand Life Master, also in the Hall of Fame. Real reason for it. He's just a great guy. Died recently. And we're sitting there, and J. Paul looks at his hand, and Michael, who used to be his law clerk. Actually, this guy became a great poker player. Grand Life Master was J. Paul Stevens' law clerk before he made it to the Supreme Court. So they're playing together. He's hired by J. Paul, and they're talking, and Mike is being very deferential to the justice. And the justice looks at me, and I said, I think you're wrong. And he says, what do you mean? Michael's goes like this. I was like, don't. I said, you're a justice, right? I said, yeah. I said, you're used to weighing things with scales. He said, yeah. I said, you decided that on the level of intelligence, the opponent you had this being the right hand, like 0. Now, the guy you're playing against, you know who he is, right? He said, well, I know his name's Paul Manafo. I said, yeah, this guy has just won the NASA Engineer Award of the Year for the 3rd time. He's pushed the launch button on the space shuttle 7 times. Now, where do you think this scale should be? You played your opponent to be an idiot. Do you know what that makes you? J. Paul said, not smart. I said, no, it makes you unwise. You're a justice. You should probably apply that to the game. There was another situation where you think about being in situations where you have stress, where you wouldn't normally have stress. And Dr. Donna and I were working with a bunch of Scripps doctors out of San Diego, right? The Scripps facility, where all the Scripps medical facility is. There was about 12 doctors who came and played at our club, and we taught a lot of them. So one day, first day I had met Ralph. Ralph is looking at a hand. He's going like this. And I said, Ralph, relax. Oh, okay. Yes. It's a very hard hand, Ralph said. Yes, it is, Ralph. So I like to talk to people in the frame of reference to what their life, qualities of experience and knowledge is, to give them a sense of security so they can translate the problem into some analogy for their career. I said, Chef Ralph, what do you do? I'm chief of surgery. This guy had been flown to the Kremlin to work on members of the committee. He was a great vascular surgeon. Right? He was 78 years old and still head of surgery. Brilliant surgeon. But at a bridge table, because he was afraid of making a mistake, Dr. Donna comes over his shoulder and says, you know, Ralph, if you don't make this hand, if you don't succeed, nobody dies. And Ralph goes, oh. And I'd like to say it decreases anxiety, but it really did. I mean, a dentist that was one of the greatest talents I'd ever seen at a game quit because he couldn't stand his mistakes being visible. Think about that too. You have people who are very concerned about the fact how they look.
There's a humbling experience there. I mean, even for me, straight A student, blah, 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 sitting at a bridge table and being proven wrong or making a mistake, that was a hurdle to get over for sure. And I don't know that I'm still over it. Like, if
you notice how I don't care how I look?
Pardon?
I don't care how I look. If I play something and it goes wrong, I don't care. Right? If I take the risk, if I believe that I should do this, and I believe in there's something called the rule of continuity. I know because I wrote it. It says that whatever you do secondarily must be consistent with your primary action. And your tertiary must be consistent with the secondary. So if you've decided to do something, you do it because you were right. You're playing yourself to. It's not really a confirmation bias, but to play against yourself is really the undermining of your decision process. So if it was right for you to buy this, it was right for you to do something with it. Same thing's true, right? If it was right for me to make this options trade, then it was right for me to execute it. And it's right for me to let it play out. So in the hand, I always act as if whatever I've done was right. And other people claim that I intimidate them. You can only intimidate yourself in the game, right? It's not like I have a gun, right? It's not like that I'm going to beat you up, if you beat me. But when I sit down, they're anxious. When I sit down, they're frightened. They're frightening themselves. You have clients. I have sponsors. Everybody I work with in the game is my partner. I must treat them as a peer. They are part of my peerage, right? What do I sell? I sell a relentless pursuit of greatness you can't ever achieve, and I can't either. But it's relentless. We never stop. If we play today and we win today, like I win the transnational mixed teams in Bermuda in 2000, I think it was January 7th. On January 8th, Karen called me and said, what have you done today? We never stop. Because we can't obtain it. But it's that pursuit of it. Think about it from faith, right? Now, my dad was an Episcopal priest. And while I'm not a religious man, I am a man of great faith, right? In process versus. I used to play bridge with a bunch of Jesuits who I happen to be related to, right? And you could tell after some papal edict had come out that these guys who openly never did anything but support the Pope would have a cigar, having a drink while they're playing cards, and say, I don't know what the hell he's thinking. But what I'm telling you is that the idea that we work within ourselves is this pursuit of greatness, right? And it could be greatness at anything. Being a great mom, being a great dog, mom, being a great, mechanic, being a great road worker, a great gardener, a great artist. Greatness is an end. The pursuit is always ongoing. And what happens is that people who get their business to a point where they now sell it or they are retiring because it's no longer defines who they are, don't stop being who they are. Like Lefty Curran. Lefty Curran was a silver medalist, goalkeeper for the United States hockey team in 1972. He's still that guy. Still plays bridge. Charles Hobson, Chuck Hobson, pitcher back in the 60s for the A's, won 20 games, I don't know, like 6 times or something, right? Great player. Because he's still that pitcher, even though he's 80. Cheryl Hedrick, I have a card about somewhere. Starting with a linebacker for the Chiefs, 3 championships, national champion college, blew out his knee in 71. He was still psycho as my bridge partner until the day he died. He was still that middle linebacker. Martina will still be the tennis player. Will Chamberlain was still the basketball champion. Bob Petit, who is now playing, he was an NBA all-star before you were born, long before you were born, before I was born. He's playing. Jimmy Kane, Bear Stearns, right? Warren, Bill, there's so many, right? Artists, musicians. I mean, Radiohead plays on their tour bus when they're between gigs, right? I mean, that's what they do. One of them, I can't remember which one, said, playing in front of 40,000 people, no problem. Trying to make 4 diamonds, that's stress. I want you to think about how, when you're done, you don't suddenly stop being who you are. I mean, there was, I can't remember if it was Disraeli or one of his cabinet who discovered that one of their other cabinet members was not a whist player. Whist being the precursor to bridge. So this is pre-1927, pre-1915. Says to him, you're not a whist player. You're in for a very long and dull retirement. So I teach kids to play, and I don't expect them to play through their 20s or their 30s, but I expect them to come back. The same way that if you expose people to religion, to kids, to religion before they're age 16, 80% of them will leave the faith or leave the church between the ages of 16 and 45. And starting at 45, 20% of those that left will come back. And starting at age 50, the identification rate of being Catholic or Episcopal or Baptist is about 60%. It's the exposure is very important. So I expose people to the game. Because I know that when we are older, I mean, you can see, how gray I am, how, I'm 60 and I'm an old 60. I mean, in bridge, I'm a young guy, right? But I've been playing for over half a century. So, I'm the old man. It's like this guy, Al Roth, famous player, dies. One a great inventor of the negative double, things like this that you don't know what I'm talking about per se, but this guy was critical to my livelihood. He dies, and his longtime partner, who was 86, calls me up and says, you are now officially the grumpy old man of bridge. I said, I'm 48. He says, you'll grow into it. I have. but I try not to. But it's one of those things that I'm still the guy inside that, I'll blitz the quarterback. Chiefs call me tomorrow, say, look, we need a guy on the defensive line. I'm there. I was a track and field guy. I was a soccer goalie. I experienced bad injuries. I recovered from them. I have one friend who's long gone, who was Goodwill Member of the Year for our National League. And remember, there's 3 million tables in tournament play every year in America alone. And there's no prize money in this game, right? Think about being a performing artist. It's like you're Tom Petty fanatic and you hire the Pretenders so that you can play on stage with them. That's us. This is a participation sport, right? Think about this as being like basketball camp or baseball camp or football camp or soccer camp where you go and you play with professionals on your team, right? That's it. We do that 43 weeks a year. Right? I mean, and some of these teams like Lavazza, millions of dollars. Lavazza is a coffee company out of Italy. Mrs. Marie, she just died, which is really, Teresa was a wonderful woman. The Bush family, the beer company, right? They hired Alma Spreckles. For those of you who are from California, the Spreckles Sugar Company, salt company. Alma was a big time sponsor. Carol Lynch, Peter, her husband, the Magellan Fund, big time sponsor. Seagate Technologies, Rita Shugart, that was Alan Shugart. Lev Dawson from Valence Technologies, the guys who invented the lithium battery. That's who I played with the most, was his wife, who they thought was just the wife, except that she went back to college, to finish her degree because she put him through school in her 40s and got her master's degree in the library and ended up being head of the Stanford Business Library, the chief librarian, as not just a housewife. Took up the game when she was 62, and by 60, and by the time she was 64, she was the #1 woman in America.
What does it say about someone's, I don't know, patience, humility, character, whatever? What does it say about a person when they raise their hand and say, I want to learn more about this bridge?
I want to learn more about this bridge.
This bridge thing you've got going.
Let me. It depends on whether they've never been exposed to it or they have. And most people in America have been exposed to it unknowingly. Like if you looked at the funny pages, the comic pages, the newspaper, there was a bridge column most of the time next to it. So there's some awareness of the game. The name awareness it's used constantly, even in television and stuff. So it's one thing to be aware of the game. It's another one we've never been aware of the game. There are two things. One, people who are unaware of the game, they see this card game, will want to play, and they'll either be drawn in or not based on their ability to withstand loss. And that's really it. I mean, here I am. I'm one of the world's best players. I lose 95%, 96% of the time. Literally, that's what happens. I'm one of the world's most successful players. I'm number 35 in the history of the ACBL, the American Contract Bridge League. Master points and success. I've coached 250 world champion juniors and seniors and women. I've lost, 30,000 times, 40,000 times, 60,000 times. I don't know. It's a lot. I know that the next hand is my day. The next session is my day. The pursuit of this is always there. So when somebody sticks up their hand and says, I want to learn how to play, right? I sit them down and say, bid what you're looking at. because there's like, you know, people want to teach people college courses to get them to play. You know, they want them to go through like 10-week process. I don't know. Immersion works far better and is a lot less painful. In some ways, it's painful because you have to understand that you're going to look like you were an idiot. Personally, I don't mind looking like an idiot because I know that I'm not going to stay one. One thing that all of us need to be careful about is to not constantly think that ignorance is a lack of intelligence. It's just ignorance. People are smart. They just don't know. And if we decide that they have a lack of intelligence, we won't even bother working with them. That's our mistake. That's our biggest mistake. Because we're not looking for their competency. We're just relating to them in relation to ourselves. So like when I, played bridge with you the very first time, right? You're no less intelligent than me. You're just less experienced. What I bring is the path to excellence. And it's not my path, it's yours. That's what I saw. I help people become who they are. I help them free themselves up to be that. And sometimes I remind them that they have stepchildren they have to take care of. Which is what I think you were referring to about how you could wring my neck sometimes.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The reason I approach you is because you have a greatness within inside of you. And it's revealed. And those of you who are out there who can work with me, you need to. But what you need to do is work with her. Big difference. Working with is everything. I can work for a lot of people. I don't do it. I work with them or I don't. Period. Clients are stuff you do. You think people you do stuff for. Sponsors are people you do stuff with. So when I enter into a partnership with Megan, it's because that both of us benefit from it. That's how a relationship in your business is supposed to be. If you don't see how you benefit from it, it isn't just about, sometimes it's just about receiving the money. How much effort are you putting in to receive this money once? How much are you putting in to receive it twice? How much of it is going to be that these people who are friends of theirs are going to come to you because that person's popular, they're worth a better deal than someone who isn't popular and isn't going to be a recurring customer. That's what drives our business, is popular sponsors, not rich ones. But we have plenty of those. Yeah. That's what makes my business successful. Right? And no matter how much I irritate them, or they want to wring my neck, or they feel challenged by me, they keep coming back.
How does someone start? If somebody's watching this, or actually running way out of time.
I'm sorry.
No, I could have mediated. How do they raise their hand and say, can I learn to play?
Great American Bridge Tour on Facebook is our webpage. Or it's not our webpage, but it's our Facebook page. Tournament Bridge Services is .com is our website.
Right.
If you just type in Great American Bridge Tour, you'll find us. And if you really want to talk about being competitive, or you really want to see what it's like to be a competitor, or how a competitor like me has an experience. I had one of the videos on the GS Jade Barrett GS Jade Barrett YouTube channel. Talks about how I was preparing for a match with some anxiety. It's 8 or 9 minutes. But it's really about how we survive competition in a competitive environment. It's not about how we play or what we play. It's about how we think about how we play. And I ask all of you, challenge all of you to spend half an hour to an hour a week thinking about why what you're doing for a living you're doing. Not challenging it, but validating it. What makes you feel like you should be doing what you're doing. And what verifies that you're doing the right thing. No matter how challenging it might be, you got business has been terrible. I haven't had a sponsor for a month. I haven't had a sale for 6 weeks. I must be doing something wrong. Maybe you are. More importantly, maybe you're not. It's just a matter of time.
Thanks,
and I can
Jade.
tell you, sweating it can be really hard.
Agreed.
Okay. I had a great time with you. I hope you enjoyed this.
I think this is fantastic. When I tear this into little bits and pieces, there's so much in here. It's so good. I can't wait. But thanks, Jade.
I hope we get to do it again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right.